Today on Exploring Scotland's History, we're going to take a wee walk down Kilmartin Glen. The first stone that we are going to visit is just outside 𝕾𝖊𝖓𝖃 and actually just outside Achnabreck Cemetery. So that's Achnabreck Cemetery there. And this is the stone we're heading for. So, first stone of the day, just behind us there. It is called Stane Alane, or to Englify it, Stane Alane, right? So this is the first of many standing stones, burial kists, cairns and various other things that we will have a look at as we head our way down the glen. Achnabreck is really classed as the gateway to the glen, and when we go up and see the stones at Achnabreck, we'll really see why it is significant. It's also worth pointing out that while we will visit numerous monuments to the Neolithic and sometimes before that period of history in this glen, there are over 800 monuments in the Kilmartin Glen area, and we're not seeing all of those in one day. There's a headstone there. We need to have a proper look at Achnabreck Cemetery. I know it's not on our list, but we'll look at it and then come back. There's some really interesting graves down there, and they're Campbell Fletchers, which is quite interesting because the Fletchers owned Argyll Castle up near Glen.
Yeah.
And
that's
our
the one,
friend Duncan the Black,
Duncan Campbell,
acquired the castle with dodgy means. So I don't know whether that intermarriage would have been overly popular depending when it was made.
Yeah.
So now we're heading up through the forestry to Achnabreck, which is basically a series of massive slabs with some very interesting markings on them. So this is Achnabreck rock art. Sir James Young Simpson, I've done plenty of posts on my Facebook page on him. He was a pioneer of chloroform and anaesthetics. He studied these rocks. On studying them, he was able to prove in some kind of manner that they weren't what the folklore was saying. The folklore, before he had actually investigated them, was saying that these were all hoof marks. They're very interesting. Some of them have 7 complete concentric circles around them. As we look here, there are incomplete rings, 7 ring symbols, and obviously there's a few damaged ones where the rock has broken away. So what could the possible meaning be of all these cup and ring marks and keystones? There's a lot of different reasons. Guys have written books with like 200 different ideas as to what they could be. But here are some of them. They could be vessels to channel blood, star maps. They could be depictions of sperm entering eggs. They could be boards for playing marbles, bloodletting. The list goes on. The designs have stood on this hill for the last 4,500–5,000 years. Of that we can be sure. Similar prehistoric rock has been found really a trail from here in Scotland down to Portugal, which would give you the idea that people were travelling with similar beliefs between the two places. Double spirals are slightly more unusual, but they have been found in the Moine Valley in Ireland and up in Orkney. This would be the natural place to come through if you were travelling from Orkney to the Boyne. So who knows? There was one researcher, Hugo Anderson Weimark, and he used the old tools and attempted to basically make cup and ring marks, and he was talking about 30 minutes to 90 minutes for each one. The reasons may be unclear, but yes, it's one of my commanding views again, and Achnabreck certainly does have it. So we're on our second site of the day, and it's already abundantly clear how important these sites are. Kilmartin is pretty much known as the most significant concentration of Neolithic archaeology in the UK. Along with the standing stones and interesting cup and ring marks, there are also a lot of duns, a lot of forts. There's one in particular, 𝕤𝖊𝖊𝖓, which was very, very significant here in 𝕤𝖊𝖓𝖓. But again, that's another fort for another day. Right, so once we get this feed in us, we'll head off the Kilmichael Glassary.
Yep, cool.
Should be more cup and ring mark stones. And there might be a standing stone or two with stories.
More than likely.
Right, go away so we get the answer. I'm going to show some footage of Kilmichael Glassary now. I didn't want to speak on film because the kids are out having their lunch. The school is right beside the glassary, which must be great for kids to have this level of archaeology right beside their school. I have to admit, these are the best looking cup and ring marks and stones that I've actually seen. Really, really quite mind-blowing, yeah. Almost 180 symbols have been chipped into these rocks 5,000 to 4,500 years ago. More theories are put forward here, from mindless doodles to records of oaths of allegiance and symbols of the Phoenician god Baal. The carvings here at Kilmichael are unusual because they really are quite deep and dense. Some are keyhole instead of round, some have incomplete rings, some enclose several cup marks. Pollen analysis suggests that people were growing barley and wheat in the Glen here 4,900 years ago. This is Torbhlaran. There are up to 40 cup marks decorating this stone. There were pieces of quartz found around the area, and it suggested that maybe it could be ritualistic, as when quartz is struck it does give off a green light. This is Creagantairbh. It's a monolith. It would have been a monolith until it was blown down in a heavy wind. When fully standing, it would have been over 15 foot high. Research suggests that it was blown down in 1879 in the same storm that took down the Tay Bridge with such a loss of life. We now are entering into Kilmartin Glen proper, really. The Glen was formed when melting ice rushing from Loch Awe headed towards the sea at Cruin. It's very flat and very fertile, though it would have been very well forested, with native woodland since cleared. We are now heading down the path in between the fields to have a look at Ballymeanoch. There's a couple of pieces of archaeological interest down here. So here we are, a Ballymeanoch standing stones. These really are quite impressive, and they really form, I suppose, a Neolithic avenue. We have 4 brooks down this side, and we'll head over to those 2 as well. There is one missing. I know where it is. We'll have a wee look at it in a minute, but these are stunning. These are the two that sit by themselves. The one on the left almost has an Easter Island look about him. This is part of Ballymeanoch as well. It's a Kerbed cairn. Quite often when we show you cairns, it is really a mound of stones, but these ones have actual cairns around them, although there has been stone robbing like so many other places. But as you can see, it's in the shadow of Ballymeanoch. I had told you that one of the stones had fallen. It fell apparently in 1880, and it made its way to the other side of this Glebe Cairn and into a ditch. And we'll show you what's unusual about it. As you can see, this particular stone has quite a sizable hole in it. Yeah, my whole hand goes through. So why was there a hole in the stone? Betrothals were often made through a hole in the stone, and also many business deals in the old days were made in the same manner. There are, however, in other parts of Scotland and the world, stones that have a much larger aperture, and the traditional tale would say that if you had a child, a baby, with an illness or disease, that passing the full weighing through the full hole in the stone would instantly cure it. I'm not so sure. We'll probably get frostbite. The natural history of this area is really quite ancient as well. We have Moine Mhor, which is also known as the Great Moss, and I'll tell you a wee bit about that now. This is my personal photo gallery of one of the last remaining intact peat bogs in Britain. 10,000 years ago there was an ice age. When it melted, this area became a freshwater loch. As plant life died and formed layers, the loch became a peat bog. The Great Moss started life over 4,000 years ago and occupied a vast area of this basin. Land began to be reclaimed for farming around 200 years ago, leaving the expanse we see today. It still supports abundant life, fauna including hen harriers, skaters and dragonflies. Flora includes bog myrtle, many species of bog moss and miniature birch, which rarely grows more than 30 centimetres in height. Let's hope that's not a human bone, because this is Dunchraigaig burial kist. There are 3 burial kists in this cairn. Cremated bones, pottery, a flint and an axe head were found in this kist as well. The area was excavated in the 19th century, and one of the most interesting finds was a crouched burial underneath the paved floor. We're here now at Baluachraig rock art, and we have another list of possible reasons why the rock art appeared. Route markers for travellers, possibility of predicting where the eclipse might land, ways maybe to communicate with ancestors or gods, maybe used in fertility rituals, maybe vessels for mixing and casting bronze. There's hundreds of reasons why these might be here. They're quite impressive. It's thought people used quartz hammerstones to make the cup and ring effects on the rocks. Now, what makes this one a wee bit more unusual? Everyone's unusual compared to the next one, let's be honest. But this one is down in the Glen. Most of the instances of rock art are much higher up where people could possibly see them from afar. These rocks, they appear to have these triangles cut into them, or the rock has blown out of possible cuts, but they're very, very like the stones we saw in Ormaig. Very like them. It's quite an interesting dry stone wall with all these little bits poking out. Wonder were they poking out to keep animals off the wall, or is it so that we can make a quick escape if we have to? I don't know. That's unusual. Now we are in the heart really of Kilmartin Glen, and we are going to do a circular walk that will take in some standing stones and a couple of burial cairns. So first of all we'll head over here to Nether Largie standing stones. There they are in the distance. Nether Largie is supposed to be in and around the same age as Ballymeanoch that we were at a couple of stops ago. There has been recent research that would suggest that these stones align with the moon every 18.5 years. That's very similar to the stones that we went to see in Mull. Magnus Magnusson of Mastermind fame, he did various surveys on the stones as well, and did decide that they could be for predicting lunar eclipses, though that has been disproven, that part of it. Magnus Magnusson, however, did say he felt that this was one of the most important Neolithic sites in the UK, and we can't deny that. The stones here have very deep cut marks. It's unfortunate Magnus Magnusson was wrong. I think the thoughts of this being a very ancient lunar observatory is really quite nice. I think it's safe to say the meaning behind most of the things that we're visiting today has been lost to history. One place that I can say will give you a fairly good idea of how our Neolithic ancestors lived is Kilmartin Museum. I'll put a link up to a video on Kilmartin. It's put into context the various vessels and bits of tools and stuff that these guys had at the time and how practical they really were, but you can see it so much better at the museum. We are now walking out to the most southerly of the burial cairns in Kilmartin Glen. So we are at Cruin Cairn, the most southerly of all the cairns in Kilmartin Glen. It's a 3-metre high cairn and there are a few burials in it, but it was built around 4,000 years ago. Tradition says that a king has been buried here, so we'll leave that one up to yourselves to decide. But when we looked at the inside of the cairn, there were shapes of at least 5 or 6 bronze axe heads. They're similar to the type of axe that was common in Ireland between 4,200 and 3,950 years ago. So clearly there was some kind of trade. It's possible whoever was buried here played a role in that trade, from Ireland to bronze working centres in Scotland. It would explain Kilmartin Glen's great wealth. In the last 250 years, Cruin has been compromised. There's been gravel extraction and it was actually used as lime kiln for a while, and there have been 3 archaeological excavations. Today, unfortunately, the cairn has been consolidated in a modern style. The grave had been opened in 1870 by the Reverend Reginald Mapleton, and he'd found burnt bone within the central grave. He said that when he opened the grave there was a very unpleasant smell, and he found a very small piece of bone that melted in his fingers. What can be said is the likes of the axe carvings are very genuine and of their time, 4,500 years ago. The reconstruction obviously is Victorian. Next stop, Templewood. Now reached Templewood, also known as Half Moon Wood. Don't be fooled by the beautiful woodland. The Victorians planted it. We discussed the Reverend Mapleton on the most southerly of the cairns, and it was him that was encouraged to excavate here as well, backed by Malcolm of Poltalloch. This is the burial kist in the centre. The burial kist to us might be quite an unusual shape, as in modern day we're used to being laid out quite long, straight and flat to be buried. But in the days of our ancestors' Neolithic times, people were often buried in a crouch position or the fetal position, which would obviously fit into the shape of this burial kist. Like I say, the Victorians, and in this area especially Malcolm of Poltalloch, were very keen to learn about their ancestors in these burial places. There are on the main kist, there are stones with the same concentric circles that we have found up and down the Glen, which is quite a popular thing for a portal to the next life. You find them in Ireland quite a lot. But these graves, in particular this smaller one behind us, there were flint arrows found, so perhaps it was the burial place of an archer, and child's teeth as well. So the kids were maybe buried out here too. While Templewood is stunning, and it's a good insight into the past, I can't help think about how much the Victorians maybe did to make it more passable and more acceptable for themselves to be out visiting here. It does give us an idea. Historic Scotland, however, are clear about the date when the cairns first arrived here, and they reckon it was about 3000 BC. The cairns of Kilmartin run for 3 miles in very much a linear pattern. They're all Bronze Age, apart from this beauty, Nether Largie South. Nether Largie South is from the Stone Age, so it's older again. So this place is Stone Age, and it was built 5,600, 5,500 years ago. The tomb would have been used to house the remains of the local farming community. The tomb would have been reused for a burial about 4,300 years ago. Beaker pots and flint arrows were placed inside with the dead inside the chambers. A few generations later, in the early Bronze Age, the monument was again remodelled and converted into a circular cairn like the others built along the valley floor. Again, Kilmartin Museum does have some of the bits and pieces that were found in here in the Victorian times when they excavated. They've found flint, unburnt human bones, pottery, beaker pots, cremated human bone, a Neolithic bowl, broken quartz pebbles, flint knives, arrowheads, and a cow's tooth. When we look at places like this, I think we really need to appreciate that people had more time then, and more time to respect their past, look to their future. There's a lot of rock art. People were clearly revered when they passed on, and it wasn't the toil and the struggle that we like to think it was. or they wouldn't have bothered with these magnificent cairns and standing stones and cup and rock marks and all the beautiful rock art, as we call it. This is another example of early prehistoric rock art. I'll put a link here to the full video of our visit to the Ormaig stones. On our way to Ormaig that day, we actually spotted the Carnasserie stones as well. Two massive pieces of rock, one 8'7" and another 8'10". They're both aligned north-northwest to south-southeast, and they sit just behind Carnasserie Castle. They were originally listed by Marion Campbell and Mary Sandman. This is our penultimate stop today. We have Kilmartin Museum and Kilmartin Church in the shadows there. I will put a link to both of them below the video. We have visited both, so it'll give you a sort of more modern view of the area. But this is what I've come to see. This is Glebe Cairn, and it's quite interesting too. Glebe Cairn is unusual because it had 2 burial kists, and since they found jet beads, they consider it might have been a woman and her partner. They were obviously both quite important. The woman's grave was surrounded by 2 concentric stone circles. The cairn was built over it after the second grave had been added. Perhaps the couple had been part of the Bronze Age dynasty. Is that maybe why they declared their status by having linear cairns the full length of the Glen? Who knows? The cairn was excavated by Canon William Greenwell in 1864. He believed the 2 stone circles around the woman's grave had spiritual significance, built to prevent the exit of the spirit of those buried within. He was quite an interesting chap himself, an antiquary, a librarian, and also the inventor of the Greenwell's glory, a trout fly which apparently anglers still use today. The jet beads were from Whitby, so obviously again showing ancient trades, this time with further down the coast. There was also a pot found which can be seen in Kilmartin Museum, and it's of Irish heritage. As we look at quite a lot of Scottish history, it is very, very clear the join between Scottish and Irish and the Celts in general. Not sure if you can see the cairn in the centre of the photo in the distance. This is the Nether Largie mid-cairn. It was excavated about 1929, and there were cup marks and also carved axe heads still seen in the southern kist, quite like our bronze king's burial. Last stop of the day, we are outside Kilmartin Glen, but at the head of the beautiful Loch Creagantairbh. And we're going to have a look at the standing stone here in Kintraw and also the cairn, but we're a wee bit wary because the sheep and the lambs are about, so we might have to retreat. Oh my! Kintraw is a 13-foot monolith, and there are 3 cairns associated with it. Excuse the racket of the sheep. This main cairn has the same name as the standing stone and is called the Danish King's Grave. Who thought sheep could be so noisy? The cairn was excavated and was found to contain 6 jet beads, a bronze buckle, shells and animal teeth. It's said that this stone marks the burial ground of a Norse prince. The cairn itself has some quite decent sized Kerbed stones on it. And it's my commanding views. Oh my goodness, that is amazing. The stone did fall at some stage and has been cemented in. Apparently it's not facing the original direction. Right, I'm going to head out of the field and give these sheep peace. If you did enjoy the video, please like and leave a comment. It really helps the channel. If you would like to subscribe, you'll see me on the next adventure. And feel free to join me on Exploring Scotland's History on Facebook and Instagram. Thanks for watching.